23 Trophy Hunter Snapper Bash is Team Traily.
Hey, this is Fish Sauce. My name's Dane, and we're here today with the current snapper champion, Macca McEwan, from the Trophy Hunter Snapper Comp last week. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Really good.
It's all right. Do you want to tell us a bit about the comp first?
The comp was really well run for its first maiden event. The aim of the competition was your biggest bag of 10 fish comprised amongst your team members. So we had 3 people on board. Bit of an advantage at the end of the day. You can fish with 2. But 3 was our magic winning number. 10 fish can come across the board of your team, or it can come from one single angler. So luckily for us, all our team members fished pretty good, and we all had a pretty even share of the bag at the end of the day.
Yeah, you just killed it. So tell us a bit more about how was it scored. Was it just 10 best fish, obviously, fork length? Give us a bit more of an insight on how it was actually scored.
Yeah, so it was structured fork length. I guess there's less variables that way, no extension of the tip length or anything like that. And it's a sliding scale system, so while you can try and get your bag of 10 as quick as you can, which is something that we tried to achieve just so that we had a score, it is a sliding scale system. So the bigger fish that you can catch, obviously the better, the more the points are going to jack up at the end of the day.
So what you're trying to say is like a 30 centimetre fish might have been 32 points or 30 points. Jump up to 50 centimetre fish, it might have gone up to like 200 points. So it's really a reward for catching a bigger average fish is what you're trying to get at.
A little bit of a funny one. Our smallest fish for the whole competition, we caught 28 fish in total. Our smallest fish was 21.4 centimetres to the fork and came in at 5 points. So our biggest fish was 76.5 to the fork, and I think it came in somewhere around the high 300 mark for the point. So there's the difference in fish.
Sweet, sweet. So I did notice as you come into the dock on the last day, fishing was all over, and there was a bit of texture on the side of the boat that said 59.5 from memory. What was that all about?
Just a bit of fun between the boys. We'd actually write down what our smallest fish was to the fork for our bag of 10 in an attempt to beat it. So we ended up with our smallest fish for 10 fish over the 2 days fishing. Our smallest fork length was 57.6. So, you know, it's not a bad bag of fish when you look at it with that being your smallest of 10.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So when I seen that 57, I went, well, these guys have got 10 fish and that's their smallest one. They're doing pretty good. They're going to be right up the pointy end this weekend.
Yeah, a few mates were stirring me up and knew that, didn't know, but had an inkling that we'd be up towards the pointy end. I just didn't expect it to be number 1. So pretty good result.
Oh, we all knew you'd be out there. On that point, like this comp wasn't just it wasn't just big names. It was a bit of a variety. There was definitely some guns there though. Like who were we fishing against?
Yeah, you know, you're fishing with a lot of anglers from Sydney that do have a lot of high-tech gear on board, big boats that they're able to punch long distances. A lot of gun local anglers with a lot of local knowledge behind them. But yeah, it was good to come out on top.
What boat did you guys fish out of?
We're out of a Trailcraft Profish 5 metre side console. So
you're pretty much just fishing out of a tinny against a variety of other guys. Plenty of tinnies there, but there's 21 foot, 25 foot big fiberglass centre consoles, American style bay boats that could they could weather that storm, so to speak.
We're in a boat that most people can probably afford if they're quite serious about their fishing. It's not a flash boat. Yes, we've got some good quality high-end gear when we need it. We've got a nice flash Garmin GPS map that we're running to help us locate the fish, and that's always going to be handy too. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just a normal tinny that most other people fish out of.
Back to the comp side of it, what did you guys win? Like, I know you got bragging rights for 12 months, but there's more to it than that.
So we walked away with about $3,500 in cash, a nice Simrad NSS 12 Evo 3, autopilot, C-map card, Trophy Hunter rods. They sponsored the event, so it was great to see them going out to most prize categories. Everyone was able to take home a Trophy Hunter rod, which was really good. And just a few other bits and pieces, boat wash, nice prize pack from Berkeley, which, you know, as you can see here, between a couple of the lures, they were the ones that helped take out the comp for us. So, yeah, big thanks to all the sponsors.
Day one, what was the plan? How'd you get it done?
Yeah, day one, plan from the get-go was just get 10 fish on the board. That was the main goal I had. And at least, you know, you've got 10 if the fishing's real tough, which for most boats it was. I think only 27 of the 68 teams made 10 fish for the comp. So to get 10 fish, we actually had 10 fish by 8:30 on the first day. So, you know, that always helps. You've got something to weigh in, and then it was just upgrading from there. So work around the tide changes, capitalise on those, dawn and dusk periods, you know, moon phases, all those things play an important role to what you're actually doing. So on the first day, we had that bag by 8:30. There was a low tide change from memory. Actually, no, it was a high tide change coming up at about midday. And things just weren't happening for us at about 10:30. And I thought we'd have a few more fish on board.
When you say they weren't happening, were you fishing in shallow? Deep?
Nah, so we started off in about sort of 50 metres straight from the get-go. Like I said, just wanting to get that bag of 10. I knew it'd be heaps easier to get a bag of 10 fishing deep water. That's just from previous experience. That's just my style of fishing as well. I do fish shallows a lot, don't get me wrong, but I just find it's easier, especially with those calmer conditions that we had on Friday, to fish that deeper water, and you'll get your bag usually a lot more consistently, a lot more quickly. So yeah, starting 50 metres, got the 10 fish by 8:30. They weren't just on plastics to start with. We actually got our first fish on a Lacanis jig. So the structure of the comp was actually you could fish 2 rods per angler. So we had a couple of Lacanis in the rod holder, bombing down in 50 odd metres while casting up ahead of the drift as well. So look, while it's unfortunate that you can't get these Lacanis style jigs, and I'm lucky enough that I've still got a bag full of the goods, but all your octopus style jigs are going to essentially work the same sort of idea. So we're just bombing those down to the bottom, wind them up a couple of metres, plant them in the rod holder. Look, they don't get a lot of fish at the end of the day, but usually the ones that I get, they're pretty good quality. So I think the first fish, yeah, there we go. The first fish was at 57.6 that ended up being our last fish of the 10 for the weekend. So that was on the Lacanis. Started to quiet off. We got a few fish on plastics. The old boy was fishing the ever so faithful 160mm squidgy wriggler in the straight shooter colour. The other ones you'll get, you know, on your drop there, just whites. Whites seem to produce a lot of quality fish for us over the weekend. And yeah, got the bag by 8:30, 10:30 it wasn't really happening, so we actually pushed wider out to about 70 metres. So once you're out there, you know, you've got current, you've got wind, you've got all those things that sort of affect your drift speed and what's happening. We were running the 1 ounce most of the time, and that seemed to help get us to the bottom to find those fish.
And when you say 50 metres and 70 metres, what sort of bottom is it? Like snapper predominantly, you know, a reef fish. Is it gravel beds? Is it a big pinnacle, gnarly looking reef out in that depth? Or? Yeah,
so in the 70 metres especially, running the TM185 transducer, it was able to pick up the bottom pretty well. So it was pretty well just flat rubble bottom. It's, you know, they don't mind that sort of country, even in your 20 metres or what have you, they'll still hold pretty well on that rubble ground. So that's what we were fishing on. The jerk shads seem to work the best out there. No given reason. We were marking a lot of bait in the area, so that often helps.
Was the plan from from days before, weeks before, this is what we're going to do, we're going to go out 50 metres, we're going to start there, get our 10, we're going to do this, this and this? Or was it a bit of a drive out the heads and see what the weather's doing and just run off the, off your nose basically? Yeah, so that's actually what I'll do a lot of the time, is just wing it, unless I've been there the day before and caught some good fish, and most of the time go back to that area. But yet again, going back to that 10 fish bag, it was straight out to the deep water. I actually hadn't fished that week at all, and I'd heard a lot of people pre-fishing, and it was hit and miss. Some people were killing it in the shallows, other people weren't. Some people were getting them in the deep, others weren't. But I just stuck
true to what's worked for me in the past, and just deep water bite on the low conditions that we had, and it seemed to pay off. So yeah, it was just that was the game plan I always had.
Yeah, so this event and your win wasn't just the Macca show. There was obviously a couple other guys on your boat, Steve and Brent. Were they all doing the same thing, all using the same lures? Or was mixing up techniques, mixing up different types of plastics, or was it all pretty much this is what we're running with?
In regards to what they were using, what they were doing, Brent was fishing pretty well the same as me. So like I said, that's just your 7-inch jerk shads. He was running white predominantly most of the day. I'd mix it up between white variants, so pink shine, watermelon pearl, all those white variants seem to be getting the bites. And that was just casting ahead of the drift, letting it sink down. More often than not, you'll get them on that initial drop. In the deep water, it's a little bit harder to gauge because you don't have the ability to feel the line or where your lure's up to as well as the shallows. But you just that just comes down to an experience thing. At the end of the day, you'll get to a point where fishing throughout the day, you'll know, right, I've got to let it drop for
15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds if I'm fishing X amount of water with X amount of weight. As far as Steve is concerned, he does things a little bit differently. He would cast out ahead of the drift, let it get to the bottom, and then instead of retrieving it when the boat had met the lure and you were pretty well up and down, he likes to feed his lure out the back. Now that sort of comes down to the squidgy wriggler, I think, helps him a lot. He loves to run a bit of S-Factor on it. I'm a big fan of scents as well, so Pro Cure, S-Factor, any sort of tacky scent seems to work pretty well. And I think that wriggle tail of the grub really helps him, so he'll actually keep feeding the lure back and click it into gear when it's on the bottom, and the momentum of the boat, I think, just helps lift that lure up and gets the action going itself. So it works for him, and he caught some quality fish, so don't be hesitant to try new things on the water. If something isn't working at the end of the day, mix it up, try something else, and more often than not, you'll probably get the rewards.
Day 2 rolls around, the forecast is terrible. We get there at the ramp or at the marina at 4:30, and it's living up to what it was forecast. Get out the heads, what happens? What do you do?
Started punching out there, got 10 minutes into the ride, it was going to take us about 45 an hour, and I went, nah, this isn't for us. We'll go fish some of the close reefs in close and wait till the sun comes up and go from there. So that's what we did, and started off drifting. I think we got our first fish in the first hour or so. The sun was up by then, but the weather was just that bad that we still didn't decide to make the call to punch further with the time limit that we had. So like I said, those inshore reefs, same system again. Brent and I on the 7-inch jerk shads, even the grubs as well, or your Golden Nemesis, they're all good lures at the end of the day. Your Z-Man jerk shads too. And yeah, running about a 1/4 ounce jig head, purely, and we're fishing in sort of 15, 20 metres. 1/4 ounce to a 3/8 with those conditions is great. We're running a sea anchor that's designed for a 30-foot boat. Our boat is not that big.
So it was slowing you down.
It was slowing us down, but still not enough at the end of the day. So you've got the wind up your back, big long cast. I'm running a 7-6 foot Samaki there, and that allows you to get those extra long casts that you want. Cast out ahead of the drift, and those slightly heavier heads than what you probably want to use in 15 metres of water. 3/8 is quite a bit of weight. It seemed to do the trick, and just help get the lure out away from the boat before we drifted on top of it. The longer you can get your lure away from the boat, generally the better. Like I said, you'll get a lot of the fish on that first initial drop, so that's what you want to try and achieve.
The reef, the kelp, gnarlier stuff to deal with. Did you guys lose any fish? Was there any moments that you were like, well, that might have just cost us the company?
Fortunately enough, we actually didn't lose any good fish for the weekend. Most of the fish we hooked, we retained. We're running, to me, it's on the heavier side of snapper gear, but you never know when you're going to come across that big kicker fish that you need in the comp that you want the heavy gear to use. So 30 pound leader is what we're running pretty well as a minimum. That combo has 30 pound braid on it, and you're running quite a lot of drag. In those shallow waters, if you hook a 80 80 centimetre fork fish, you're talking an 8 kilo red potentially.
So day 2 is the fishing shallower, notorious for the bigger fish. We know you've got your 10 on day 1, pretty good average already. Did you get any upgrades?
Yeah, we ended up with 2 on the second day. One was, I think, a 63 fork, and the other was around that sort of 60 mark as well. And that's what ended up putting us up there with almost, 60 centimetre fork fish at a minimum.
So you guys fished day 2, you've got a couple of solid upgrades. The weather is not improving, it's terrible. You're punching back in. How was morale between Steve-O and Brent?
Yeah, we had fun, and that was all we went out there to achieve, and ended up winning. So it became a lot more fun later on that night.
Run us through like the last, I think it was like the top 5 awards. You knew what score you'd got because you'd calculated all your numbers for the day. It comes down to the top 5. What's going through the McEwans and the Brent Stewart's heads?
I knew we got a briefing sheet at the start of the comp, and I knew from that scale graph that our smallest fish, 57.6 to the fork, was worth about 150 points. So if you put 10 of those together, that being our smallest, we're up to 1,500 points to start with. I knew the bag was better than that. They announced the 10th place team with about 1,500 points, so I knew we were somewhere in the top 10. Starts to get, we're pushing down the numbers. Top 5 gets announced, top 4, top 3, and we were expecting sort of maybe top 3 by this point, maybe 3rd place, something like that. And that got announced. We didn't get a placing. It was down to the top 2 teams, and Sondel, who was running the whole comp, he started to read out the fork lengths of the second team.
So we know it's down to the final 2. You've done the numbers. They've called out the fork lengths of the number 2 team. You've got a bit of an idea of where you guys are sitting. The other boys don't.
They started reading out the second team. I knew that wasn't us. It then came down to, I got a little bit nervous because I was the one responsible for lodging all the scores for the weekend. Now, being the first time that this comp has been ran, it was a different structure to just handing in your score sheet manually, etc. And yeah, a little bit of the technical side had me worried to make sure I'd actually done everything right. But as soon as they announced that first number, 57.6, they followed on with a 76.5. I knew both those fish were ours, and that sort of still hasn't sunk in, but that's when it really hit home that we'd actually won.
Yeah.
In no particular order, a 59.4, a 63, a 76.5, a 68, a 63, a 64, a 63, a 65.8, a 62.7, a 57.6. They don't sound like big numbers because we're not talking tip lengths, but they are all very good fish. Well done to this team.
Oh, well, even prior to that, as I was reading out the scores, I actually looked over to Dad, and he sort of looked at me with a...
You're doing the numbers, you're going, yeah, that's my fish, that's my fish, that's my fish. They call out Team Traily.
The winning team for the 2023 Trophy Hunter Snapper Bash is Team Traily.
The crowd erupts, the table goes berserk. There's hugs, there's kisses, there's probably tears, there's high fives. You guys get up there, you get your trophies, you're all celebrating. The night's puppy. It's getting pretty rowdy. A day later, what happens? Does it sink in on the spot, or is it a day after? Has it sunk in yet?
Nah, to be fair, it hasn't even sunk in yet. Yeah, like I've done a lot of this fishing over the last probably 15 years or so. It's super addictive, snapper fishing. I absolutely love it. Out of everything, living on the Coffs Coast, we've got so many options at our fingertips, and it's pretty well the pinnacle for me. I've done everything from chasing blue marlin on the shelf, bass fishing in the kayak, trout up at Dorrigo in the streams. It's all about the pinnacle for me. And
we're going to wrap it up, but before we do, any shout outs, obviously, like, wives, girlfriends, mums, mates. Is there anyone that you want to thank? Any shout outs?
Our partners, not only mine, Nicola, she's always supported in what I do, but Steve's wife and Brent's wife, they were all, over the moon for us, and they were all there at the presentation, which makes it even that much sweeter. To see all the hard work and dedication you've put into it to come to life, it's pretty awesome. I actually work with Dad a couple of days of the week, and he's more than happy for me to go out and put time on the water before, after, during work. So that was always nice too, to have her come home with us. You've got people like Motackle, which I've worked there for almost 10 years now. They've always been really good with helping staff purchase great products at a really quality price, which is nice. You've got North Coast Boating Centre. They've always looked after our boat on the water. They go above and beyond. It's really good to have someone local in town who's happy to put that extra bit of effort in when you need it, and they'll always bend over backwards for you, which is great. We're running quality products, and that's been really helpful to our success. You've got things like Garmin, as we've already touched on, Suzuki. These are all quality brands which North Coast Boating Centre are happy to present, so that was really good too. Not only that, people like Bluefish, Samaki, Josh, Nathan, Kate, you guys have always been really, really helpful. You're always happy to hand out pieces of knowledge when we're going to places as well, so that's really good too.
One final part to leave. I know it's 12 months away. Who's going to win it next year?
I'm humble, but Team Traily, all the way.
Yeah, nice.
We did say it was a social event. In the mug.
How do we sound, Nicola?
Actually sound like you know what you're talking about.
You happy you got a mention?
Yeah, thanks.
I thought you were going to say my queen.